Hello, everyone, and welcome to Deep Dive Zone, a Sonic the Hedgehog rewatch podcast for fans of all shapes and sizes. I'm your host, Devin, joined as always by my comrades Lauren and Bruce, and this is part 4 of our 6-week journey through Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. As usual, Bruce was not present for every episode, and there's going to be some inconsistencies in sound quality for the ones that he is here for. So if things seem a little off, that's why, but with all that said, welcome and enjoy the show. Episode 34, Mad Mike, Da Bear Warrior. Robotnik starves a village of rabbits into building a statue of himself. With help from Big Grizz and Mad Mike, Sonic and Updike, one of the villagers, managed to infiltrate the statue. I did not need to see these bears again. Their joke still isn't funny.
No, I agree completely. Also, the title is unfitting again because I was like, oh, it's going to be a Road Warrior parody, but it only comes up for like one scene.
They just wanted to have that be the title and were like, just throw together a scene to make it kind of fit.
It's literally what it is. I think this is the first episode where you actually see Tails like
being
tinker
a mechanic
with machines. Yeah.
Yep, I wrote that one too. I'm happy to see that. The other thing that I thought about this episode was Eggman's goal in this episode is to have a statue of himself carved into a mountain. Couldn't you achieve that legally? You could just get, like, even if you're still breaking the law, you could just get your robots to do it. You could pay somebody to do it. Robotnik has money.
But it wouldn't be as sweet without enslaving a bunch of Mobiums and causing misery.
I know, it's another one of those applying rational logic to a silly, dumb kids show things, but it's just like, come on, man. Because if it's like the statue is a weapon or something, then it's like, okay.
No, my remark was actually serious because it lines up with Robotnik's character in that he's very gleeful in his evil, and so he wouldn't just... I mean, he might just make a statue of himself, make his robots do it, but I can totally see him doing it in a roundabout way that would get in a lot of people's ways.
Yeah, I suppose.
Anyway, that's just the way I see it. There isn't really a whole lot more to say about this one other than that Sonic tricks Scratch into revealing all of Robotnik's traps in advance, but then doesn't really do anything to try to avoid any of them, which kind of plays into his sort of daredevil self that, like, he enjoys all of this, which is interesting, and again, a bit of kind of surprising consistency.
Yeah. Episode 35, The Last Resort. So one thing to note before I even read the synopsis, there's like 4 different episodes of Sonic cartoons named The Last Resort. There's a Sonic X episode named that, and there's a Sonic Underground episode named that. I don't remember if there's a Sonic Sat AM episode named that. I'm pretty sure there is.
Interesting.
There's no Sonic Boom episode named that. There might be a Sonic Prime episode named that. We haven't really got enough information on that one yet. Anyway, Robotnik seemingly announces his surrender to Sonic and invites him to a resort in his gratitude. Unbeknownst to Sonic, the resort is just another trap created by Robotnik.
Yeah, so I was pretty surprised that this show actually got me thinking and wondering about the plot at first, because, you know, obviously Robotnik's like, oh, no, I decided to retire. Obviously it's a trick. That's child's play to derive. But I was like, what is he up to then? I was trying to figure it out, but then they blow the cover only 8 minutes in. Could have drawn that a little more. Oh well.
Yeah. I don't have a lot to say about this episode, but I do have one thing to say that's like accidentally genius, which is the mayor at the start is accidentally a pretty good political commentary because Eggman's trying to launch, a big terrorist attack on the city, basically, and the mayor's like, no, you have to sign these papers before you're allowed to do that.
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
Also, you were saying about the blown cover thing. They should have noticed that Robotnik immediately lied about his mom being too ill to talk.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Which brings in the fact that Mama Robotnik shows up in this one. This is the only episode where she doesn't really... Well, that's not true. I literally realized that was wrong. There's one episode where she just kind of shows up on the side, which is interesting. She's one of the most recurring non-main characters. I mean, yeah. I guess even Coconuts falls into that category now that I'm thinking about it. Like, seems like they show up a similar amount once Coconut stops being a regular. Not quite that, but yeah, she's just kind of there. So I'm like, she's a new permanent addition.
It's weird that she's become such a recurring face in the cast because Mama Robotnik, my first introduction to this character in any form was in some of the like off-panel like joke comics at the end of the Archie comics, where John Gray would just sort of draw her in as a weird-looking, punchline. And so I thought, oh, this must be, this is a weird episode of Adventures of Sonic where Robotnik's crazy mother is here. But now she's the second most common villain on the show and has a very consistent personality. And it's like, it's kind of incongruous with this weird looking, crazy faced thing that Gray would draw sometimes.
Interesting. There isn't really a whole lot more interesting to say about this episode. I mean, once the jig is up, it's pretty straightforward.
Standard, yeah.
Just more shenanigans. Apparently, based on one of Sonic's lines, he's been fighting Robotnik for several years. Doesn't really give us a very good timeline, but that's interesting to note.
Which, if Tails is 4 years old, does that mean that Sonic has been fighting Robotnik since before Tails was born?
Possible.
Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, if Sonic is his standard 15 years old in this show, that means there's almost 10 years of age between him and Tails.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that just about does it.
Episode 36, Robotnik's Rival. Robotnik and a rival named Quark Rex try to cooperate in capturing Sonic. However, Sonic tricks them into becoming enemies, and they try to outdo each other. First thing, why is this not just Dr. Warpnik again?
It wouldn't quite have worked because they actually get the synopsis brushes over the fact that it's more like they're enemies and then they're friends and then they're enemies again at the very end. They're actually allies for a lot of it. Yeah, I guess that could happen with Warpnik if you developed his character more, but it wouldn't really work as much.
I suppose.
I kind of like Quark. He's a little gimmicky, but he's also kind of funny. I guess more though, I actually like his sidekick Doofus.
Yes.
I feel with him so much. He kind of like Tails. He's just got this calm and cool and no nonsense sort of demeanor. Yeah. And then he like breaks at the stupidest thing. So I feel bad for him. But okay, so yeah, as I touched on, Robotnik and Quark, so they're enemies and then they become friends. And surprisingly, Sonic tries to tear them apart several times, but keeps failing to the point that I'm like, has Quark like stopping Robotnik from being an idiot? And then eventually, just because in the episode, they become enemies again. But I really like the ride along the way. There's a bit where like they're given fake news about each other, and like they've turned each other, and then they like become indifferent and like betray each other again, and then they're like friends, and like they flip back and forth like a million times in like 30 seconds. It's very funny.
On again, off again relationship.
So this is a interesting subtle detail. If you look closely, when Robotnik and Quark are forced to kiss each other, Quark is disgusted, but Robotnik actually blushes and smiles.
I did not notice that.
Yes, worth mentioning.
Oh, the shipping is just out of control on this series. It's funny to say that when it's like it's gonna be so much worse by the time we're like talking about Sonic X or something.
Oh no!
The shipping on that show is out of control.
I'd imagine.
Alien plant girlfriend. Anyway, I like that Scratch and Grounder inspire the Doofus robot into betraying his creator because they've got so much experience with it.
Oh yeah, that is fun. Definitely.
It's the one thing they're good at.
Yeah. The bit when Doofus is like, I have betrayed my creator. I'll live with it. He's just like instantly like, that's fine. Just encapsulates what I love about them.
Also, Tails paints over a billboard at one point, and I know it's to friggin', make trouble for Robotnik and the other guy, but it's like, all of a sudden this show supports vandalism, you hypocrites.
No consistency. 0 out of 10 episode again. Gosh.
Yeah. No, this is one of the better ones, though. I like this one.
No, I actually do too. At the end, when Robotnik and Quark are firing like a billion missiles at each other, is just hilarious. It's so over the top. Also, at the end, for some reason, Robotnik is like, "Oh, blast Sonic with the duplicator." What? How would that help?
Don't.
Anyway, on that note, I said my notes.
Yeah. Episode 37, The Magic Hassle. Coconuts acquires a magic wand and magical gadgets from Wes Weasley and warns Sonic, after agreeing to forward all payments to Robotnik, and attempts to master them. Meanwhile, Robotnik tries to change Sonic-themed Mobium banknotes into Robotnik banknotes in the Mobius Mint.
I'm putting high standards on this show again for no real reason, but I'm impressed that this show goes into the economics of Robotnik schemes. How does he fund all of his creations? And they actually go into it because he robs a bank.
A
He's
lot of
just
fraud, yeah.
in it for this money. Well, I guess there was the Casino Night Zone too. Now that I think about it, but I was impressed that it came up again. The casinos are even in the games, like that's expected.
Does
But
he own the ones in the games, I wonder?
I mean, his badniks are all over the place. I would think. I just assumed. I guess
But that
it's
makes
not
it weird that like
given.
Casinopolis is just in Station Square. I guess maybe it is the same thing as Sonic Underground, because that's why the police barely ever go after Eggman in the games as well. They go after Sonic more often.
Yeah, yeah.
It's all a conspiracy. It goes all the way to the top.
Oh my gosh. But another interesting bit is that they also allude to the fact that, like, oh, he has to pay for his schemes and he has to actually, like, put his assets in order and all that. Because there's a bit where you see him, like, sitting at a desk doing paperwork, which is nothing I would ever expect to see Robotnik doing. But at the same time, naturally, he would have to at some point.
Yeah, got to do his taxes.
Yeah, because he's a good citizen. He's the one that's in the right or whatever. It's that darn hedgehog. I don't know. Anyway,
So did you notice that in this episode, Robotnik's computer makes Mario sound effects?
yes, I did notice that. That is one of my notes.
I have to wonder how that happened. I assume that it's like Deke, since they did both this show and the Mario shows, they just had a bank of sound effects, and like somebody who was making this didn't realize that they were from a Mario cartoon.
That's probably what it is, but it is weird.
Yeah, I was like, huh? I had to tab into a different window as I listened to it.
Yeah, it's strange too because Hacker's computer back in Grounder the Genius made Sonic sound effects, so it's like they got it right and then they screwed it up in this one.
And that makes it especially weird because that means that they have access to sound effects from Sonic games, but they always just use like a generic buzzsaw sound effect whenever Sonic does a spin attack in the show.
Yeah, I've heard it so much in this show though that my brain is just like, yeah, that's the sound Sonic makes when he spins.
No, I mean, it's fine. It's not particularly bad. I don't like that the spin attack itself appears to be a buzzsaw in the show, because, like, that... How does he become flat? But,
There's a bit when Coconuts has a magician cape and he's talking to Wes Weasley, and you can
yeah.
see he has a cape, and then like 15 seconds later, it's like turns into a smaller cape, and then like 10 seconds later, he suddenly has no cape, and I'm like, so I mean, obviously there's like continuity differences where like a character's holding something, and next frame they're not holding it, whatever. It doesn't matter. They were too lazy to draw it. It's like they subtly put it away until they didn't have to draw it anymore.
Yeah,
Weird.
it's
I don't know why
like
they
this
did
show
that.
is full of little, animation hiccups. That seems like a case of maybe they didn't even have a model sheet for this version of the character, him with this outfit, and so there was just like, oh, I assume that this is meant to be drawn with this, and then another one's like, the last guy drew it with this, I don't know if it's meant to be, and the other guy's like, this guy's not meant to have this, I'm not drawing it.
Yeah, I guess so. That's probably that could be it.
Episode 38, Sonic the Matchmaker. Robotnik pursues Breezy and Robotnik Jr. in order to find out why they betrayed him with the intent of building a perpetually loyal robot wife. In a subplot, Jr. is in love with Breezy and enlists Sonic's help in wooing her. So, there's a lot of jokes that you could make from the outset with that. Incel Robotnik, continuing his character arc.
Yes. I can't believe that even Robotnik. But slightly off that subject, the way this episode opens up, I was like, what the heck? Scratch and Grounder are referencing Lovesick Sonic and then Robotnik Jr., and they literally recap the episodes. Did I fall in a parallel universe? This show feels like it actually builds on previous episodes, and Robotnik is learning from their failures. What the heck?
It's terrifying. The show's developed a brain.
It doesn't last for long, but I was still really thrown off.
Yeah, no, it's a weird episode all around, to be honest. It starts with continuity, which is, strange enough on its own. It then proceeds to ship two previous sort of antagonists, but not quite that, turned. I guess this confirms that Junior is a furry, but, like, not the fun kind. He's just kind of creepy.
Yeah,
I guess if the character designs were better, maybe I'd have a different opinion. But then again, if the character designs were better, then it would be like a Sonic 06 scenario. So I guess there's no winning.
Yeah.
Well, so here's the thing. First of all, I don't know if you're saying that because being a furry is terrible, or if the fact that he's not really all that likable and kind of going about it terribly, and yet she falls for him for no reason anyway.
But
the fact
is not that being a furry is terrible, because no, but
I was exaggerating.
it's like he gives me the impression of like a 40 to 50-year-old furry who's kind of been around since the 80s and tries to act authoritative about it. He thinks that he knows what he's doing for some reason, even though he constantly screws up and he constantly asks others for help. It's really weird.
Yeah, well, the fact of the matter is, the show explains it's because they're both robots. It has nothing to do with the species that they're modeled after.
Well, I was going to bring that up, and that's probably what makes it less weird.
And I really appreciate how this episode also retroactively explains why Breezy disappeared after her debut episode, because literally the ending is like, oh, Sonic's like, I gotta go chase after her, but then she doesn't show up, and I'm like, oh, I guess the plot just forgot to progress. But no, they just stalled for a while, I guess, instead, because then they explained that basically Breezy's like, no, I only deal in robots.
I'm robosexual.
Ooh.
No, and I guess but it's also weird because Sonic is not attracted to Breezy at all in this episode. He's just, perfectly complacent and friendly, which I appreciate because I don't like Sonic being attracted to people in general. But it makes it like weird that just he's completely he just switched the moment that's like, oh, robot, no, none of those for me.
Well, again, that's not the way it's presented at the end of her debut episode. So I have to assume there was something that happened in the middle.
That's the internal logic that he would have to have made this change, I feel like.
I guess, but it wasn't literally flip a switch.
Weird episode.
Well, on the one hand, it is kind of funny. It leads to some funny lines from Robotnik making a wife for himself. We haven't really touched on that a whole lot. But it's also kind of, I don't like it. The incel Robotnik is not the trait that I like of this version of the character. Nonetheless, I do like the line, a match made in heaven is nothing compared to a match made in a lab.
Well, it's a tricky thing, because it's like, I don't really have a concrete opinion on whether I want Robotnik to have a love interest in any context, in any continuity. The idea of building one himself is kind of pathetic in a joke way, but it would be weird if they took it too seriously. But I'm pretty sure that outside of a few scant jokes, I don't think anything ever goes as far as this episode in any Sonic continuity.
Yeah, no, it's definitely more of a this Robotnik sort of a thing.
Yeah.
Episode 39, Tails Prevails. On Sonic's birthday, Tails builds a flying bicycle. Realizing Tails' full potential with mechanics, Professor Von Schlimmer invites him to be his research assistant, but then Robotnik captures and impersonates him to get Tails to build his latest anti-Sonic weapon. So I like seeing Tails actually get to put his mechanical skills to use.
Yeah, I feel like I don't get to see him do that much.
Not in the old stuff, certainly.
Yeah, newer stuff, sure, but the old stuff definitely... Was that always part of his character?
Well, so he was always able to, at the very least, fly a plane in Sonic 2, which would suggest some amount of mechanical prowess. I don't know, because I don't think that we've ever had a lot of internal design documents, at least on the Japanese side of things, saying that Tails is a whiz kid with machines. But definitely most of the American continuities never picked up on it at first. Like, Archie Comics doesn't have it, Sat AM doesn't have it. I don't think Sonic the Comic has it, but, I haven't read much of that.
It's weird that they actually treat it not showing up later as an actual thing in Universe 2, because Robotnik reacts to Tails having adeptness as a mechanic as a new thing. He's like, so Tails is good with machines, and then takes advantage of it, which I thought was interesting. It's not just they forgot to incorporate it, but I guess that he just picked it up later on.
Yeah, which makes me ask, where did he get that?
That's a good question.
I mean, they don't explain it, but The easy answer is that he's naturally gifted, and he probably, out of just interest or boredom or what have you, messed around with some of Robotnik's broken machines by Sonic, and then went from there.
Maybe Tails' adventure is set in this show's continuity, and it's actually not set before Sonic 1, and so Tails just at some point along the ride drank some brain juice and got really powerful.
Well, there you go.
Well,
that was a complete nonsense explanation. I'm sorry.
No. Were you saying Tails' Adventure was before this or after this?
Pretend that I didn't say anything. It means nothing.
Okay. Well,
Right.
I think it's interesting, again, that repeatedly Tails is shown to be very capable physically. Like, they can fly, and their tails make them just as fast as Sonic.
And he throws a piece of paper hard enough to break a window somehow.
That too. But it's his lack of self-confidence that holds him back. There's a bit where Robotnik grabs Tails, and he's like, help, Sonic, and doesn't try to fight him. But then as soon as Sonic shows up to help, then he's encouraged and then breaks free on his own without Sonic actually helping.
Well, of course, Tails does not have a weakness, as we've discussed. It's
right.
He just needs to have confidence in himself.
Exactly. Another bit of self-awareness in the show that was kind of out of the blue. There's a bit where Sonic and Robotnik are like fighting in the sky, and Sonic uses finger guns, and then it actually fires lasers for some reason, and Robotnik says, "Hey, how do you do that?"
It feels completely random. Is that just a new power we've decided Sonic has? I guess not, because it doesn't come up again.
No, it's just the show realizing that a lot of it is completely out of the blue, and yeah, there is no explanation. Don't look into it too seriously. That won't stop me.
Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't think about it.
Also, have to bring up the fact that almost back to back, there's a Star Trek reference and then a Star Wars reference.
Okay, I was not imagining the Star Trek reference.
The Star Trek reference is when Robotnik asks Tails to speed up the modified Robotnik nabber. They respond
giving her all she's got, Captain.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha. Well, I knew it had to be a classic Trek reference, because your guys' Star Trek fandom are from, like, they're centered in different parts of the series.
And then for the benefit of the audience, the Star Wars reference is when Robotnik is focusing their crosshairs on Sonic, they say, "I have you now."
Oh, I didn't catch that one.
That's in everything.
Well, Baldry adjusts his voice to sound like Vader. It's definitely a reference.
I'm not saying it's not, because
I'm gonna have to go back and
plenty of stuff from Star Wars as is.
I'm gonna have to go back and look at that now, because I didn't even catch that.
I mean, it's meaningless, but it made me happy.
Yeah. Well, Star Trek reference did the same thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 40, Zoobotnik. An intergalactic huntress captures various citizens of Mobius and falls in love with Robotnik during her visit.
So, Gatella looks so wrong. She stands out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, she looks like a character from a different show.
I actually wondered if she was, but no. It's just randomly they decided now we're gonna... Yeah, they draw this character that just looks like a human you'd see in some other cartoon.
It's really weird. It's like... It affects the feel of the entire episode, because you have this warrior woman or whatever who's from space or whatever, and suddenly becomes smitten with Robotnik. And it's like, A, Robotnik is incredibly lonely, and they show that throughout the series, and B, why would he not... Like, why would he reject her advances? Like, I guess she just comes on too strong? Is that it? I don't know.
Yeah, she's incredibly abusive, but I noticed that too, and he immediately rejects her before he starts, like, bonking him around or whatever the heck she does.
I guess it's like he wants to separate his professional and personal lives, because since he's already planning on lying to her, he's like, I can't actually do it. You know, this can't just be a mutually beneficial marriage. It has to be a lie.
That's right.
She also calls him Eggy Weggy, which is the closest anyone has come to calling him Eggman in the show.
There's just a random bit where Sonic gets devil horns for some reason. I don't know. It stood out to me when he's like watching her beat him up. And then when during like their wedding, then there's this bit where Tails is playing the piano, and he's got this dress up. He's got this diabolical look on his face. So it's like Tails and Sonic are both enjoying this a lot.
Well, it's like Sonic is also like the one officiating. Is Sonic an ordained minister?
Well, there's nothing to say. Maybe Scratch and Grounder recognize his like costumes because he's actually just qualified in all those things. I mean, I could see the writers pulling that off. Oh, he's so fast, he can just go around and do a million jobs.
Sonic just took a bunch of like online certification quizzes.
Yeah, it's got to be it.
Yeah, because I mean, you can become an ordained minister online technically in like 30 minutes. Maybe it's just people from my family that decide to go to school for 4 years for that, but maybe that's what you do
if you're fast and you hate the word slow.
I'm just imagining, because my mom had to go to school with that shit to become a chaplain, and I'm just imagining like her working through seminary for 4 years, and she's sitting in class next to Sonic the fucking Hedgehog, who's just going 80 miles an hour filling out forms.
Oh my gosh. Yes. My last note in this episode is most of the episode was not terribly remarkable. I guess there was a bit that Catella has ominous music that's literally being played on a record player. That was kind of funny. But I was like kind of like, whatever about this episode. Then there's a plot twist at the end that I didn't see coming and yet is entirely logical. The one who stops the wedding is none other than Mama Robotnik. And I'm like, yes, that is perfect.
I am on it. That's a very good. It's honestly pretty good. The animation in this episode also has like CDI Zelda energy at certain points, because there are certain shots of Catella and Robotnik where they're just kind of motioning to the camera and like leaning in and out closer and further away from it. It's like, oh, that's fucking Morshu. That's what it is.
I did not see that, but now that you put it that way, yeah, I can see what you're talking about.
Episode 41, Attack on Pinball Fortress. Robotnik has unleashed his stupidity ray on Mobius, knowing that the newly stupefied Mobians will be too brain-dead to stop him. As Sonic and Tails make their way to Robotnik's new lair, the Pinball Fortress, they find themselves competing with Wes Weasley and Sergeant Doberman, both of whom want to capture the stupidity ray for their own purposes. So we've got a very loose Sonic Spinball adaptation here?
Yeah, that really caught me off guard. Usually this, as we've seen, usually the show doesn't try to take anything from the games really other than names, but they actually, it's still not very accurate, but it's a lot more accurate and they obviously tried a lot harder with this one.
Yeah, because you've even got like the Scorpius boss in there.
Yeah, and I think, no, they call it toxic pools instead of toxic caves, but the area is obviously based on toxic caves.
I think it's called Toxic Pools in the Game Gear version, actually, so that still works.
Well,
this also, I believe, makes Sonic Spinball the only classic game to be adapted by both a show and a comic. Because I don't think, I mean, I guess if you count the Knuckles episodes of Sonic Underground, then Sonic 3, but those just have Knuckles in them.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't count that. But yeah, for that reason, this episode is fairly notable and pretty entertaining.
I like that Wes wants the stupidity ray to con people out of their money, and the Sergeant wants it to make his soldiers more obedient.
Yeah, I didn't expect to see the Sergeant again. I was kind of used to Weasley at this point, but this is really, we're getting into the point of the show that I'm like, it has a bit of a rotating cast more than just, sort of one-off characters. They still have one-off characters, but I'm surprised how much they're bringing back characters at this point.
I just wish that I liked the characters they were bringing back a little bit more.
True that. I like Robotnik's Gorilla Warrior costume. It just contrasts with his usual getup. And for some reason, when he accidentally almost shoots Scratch, he's like, "Oh, are you okay?" And he seems genuinely concerned, and it's kind of endearing.
Yeah. Oh, there's a really good. I wouldn't call it a spiritual successor to this show because it's really different, but in OKKO, the villains, or rather the initial villains of that show, are very much inspired by Robotnik and Scratch and Grounder in that show, to the point where, it's a fat evil scientist voiced by even Jim Cummings in that show. But he treats his two robot minions very much like Scratch and Grounder, while they're kind of endeared to him, and they even call him Dad. And so moments like that kind of remind me of that show, because he's sort of flip-flops between caring about them as people and not.
Yeah, the main thing they have in this is that he always repairs them no matter what. But rarely is he actually...
Which, to our viewers, watch OKKO. It's a better show than this.
I'm thinking, I didn't realize it had those parallels. I might have to check it out.
I think you'd enjoy it as a bit of absurdism. It's nice. Anyway.
Mario sound effects show up on the pinball table again in this one for some reason.
Mm-hmm. Robotnik gets hit by his own stupidity ray at the end, and that moment made me realize this show is surprisingly light on self-destruct buttons. Because he does use one, but, we're 40 episodes in, and that's the first one that I remember.
Yeah, it's a kind of random observation, but you're right.
I don't know, I just feel like this is the kind of show where it's like, oh, we've got a problem, we'll just hit the self-destruct button, and they would just do that every single time. Because even like Phineas and Ferb, which is, another better show that has the animal versus evil scientist thing going on, relies on self-destruct buttons way more than this show.
Yeah.
Episode 42, Mass Transit Trouble. Robotnik threatens to demolish an airport, a lighthouse, and a train station. Sonic is forced to travel to all three places in order to remove the bombs. This was another episode that I had seen on that initial DVD, and I remember liking this one.
Yeah, I was about to say, this episode had so much promise with the first half of it. The first half is actually solid. I'm surprised at how competent Scratch and Grounder and Robotnik's plan all is, and it works. And I'm like, wow, I'm actually kind of wondering what Sonic's going to do to solve it. Run around the whole world after he's been tired out, but then he just does it anyway and wins.
Well, and it comes to some really weird solutions, like how he uses his shoes to burn one of the bombs unstuck from the ground. Huh?
I don't get that.
I assume it must have been. It's like, because you can't weld dynamite to things. Like, that would have been more likely to set it off than anything.
Yeah. This episode also has, again, not a unique problem to this show, but a very egregious example of, the bombs are going to explode in 5 minutes, but then it's like 10 minutes. And then it's going to explode in 15 seconds. And I actually timed it. It's 1 minute and 45 seconds.
Well, really? At least it doesn't take, 15 episodes like in fucking Dragon Ball Z, but
that is what I was trying to allude to, yes.
At least in that show, Frieza was just kind of bullshitting, so maybe he didn't even know that he was wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, great setup, disappointing resolution. Other than that, I just kind of got more random notes. The sea captain at the beginning just kind of slides around the deck without turning at all, and I just find that really funny.
Yeah.
So the last thing that gave me hope, disappointing, when they had saved the day and all was well, and then Robotnik popped up on the television screen to announce that his plan had worked for a split second. I wondered, because I knew this series has other multi-parters, if Robotnik was about to announce that he had another counter plan, because he'd already made a counter plan, and then it was going to turn to a two-parter episode, but then it turns out he was just mistaken.
Yeah, would have been nice.
Would have been legendary, man. But I hold this series to too high standards, to be honest.
This episode could have been... I'm like trying to think, like, what Sonic story that was like a diamond in the rough would this be compared to? And it's like, it's not the same as Metallic Madness, but it would have the same sort of feel of suddenly a really entertaining story in the middle of a kind of bland show that story did for the comics. One more thing, this episode was removed from broadcast 2 different times, once due to the Oklahoma City bombings, and then again due to 9/11.
Yep.
This episode couldn't catch a break.
Gosh.
Or maybe just people in terrorist attacks couldn't. I guess that's... Yeah, I'm not going to make any jokes about that. Let's just move on.
Yep.
Episode 43, Coachnik. Robotnik constructs a pushy robot coach in an attempt to increase Scratch and Grounder's fitness. This leaves Robotnik time to create a football-shaped bomb in order to destroy Sonic. Robots cannot become physically fit by exercising.
Well, I agree with your exact wording. These are no ordinary robots, as this show has obviously showed.
Okay, what kind of synthetic muscle tissue do they have that's being increased here?
I mean, I'm not really going to argue about that in any detail. It's still weird, and it's a problem with the entire show. I'm just saying, it's more of, I'm not surprised at this point by it.
No, neither am I. It's just silly.
Honestly, this is one of the more boring gimmicks. Not that many of them are very interesting, but this episode did not interest me very much. One of my only notes is that Sonic makes another Arnold Schwarzenegger reference in this one with another disguise.
When the weird thing is that Arnold Schwarzenegger Sonic, he is buff, but they don't explain how.
Just because, I don't know.
Because if they showed him, like, lifting weights super fast, that would make sense, but they don't. He just becomes inflated. I don't even see any bike pumps around.
Yes. No, it's like when I wasn't surprised when Goopster ate a tree. I just accept it because it's cartoon weirdness.
I suppose.
Again, it's not a real argument. I'm just not surprised by it at this point.
Suspension of disbelief hostility in this series.
Yes. Once again, the Coachnik obviously works for Robotnik, but then as soon as Robotnik blows him up, betrays him on a dime. So Robotnik really has to earn the loyalty of his minions in this show.
Yeah.
But he does very bad at that. So the whole gimmick of this episode is that the Coachnik is going to train Scratch and Grounder, but they literally don't improve at all.
Yeah, because they're robots.
Yes, you're right. But I expected something to change. In other episodes where there are gimmicks, it at least changes it for the episode. But the Coachnik was just there, and it led to shenanigans, but nothing changed.
No, it was a complete waste of time.
Yeah, even more than I would expect. And that's all I got for that one.
Episode 44, Untouchable Sonic. Sonic comes to the rescue of a town that is held for ransom by Robotnik's crime syndicate. A few scenes from the pilot... What? A few scenes from the pilot animation are integrated into this episode. That was... I guess I must have taken this from the YouTube descriptions. That's how I got the pulled from broadcast description for the other one. But that's not part of the plot.
Okay. So, I think it was in this episode where Sonic is, like, running past... Yeah, he's running past things so fast it's, like, messing up stuff. And then the citizens, like, run and hide from him. So I thought the plot was going to be that Sonic is a real menace with his speed. He's not caring for anyone's safety as he's running by. But that wasn't actually it.
No.
It's interesting to see Adventures of Sonic versions of the Ball Hog and Roller in this episode.
I know, they put actual Sonic 1 badniks in this episode. They look weird, but that's them.
The resemblance is there, but yeah. For some reason, there's a really surprisingly lengthy sequence where the show parodies itself with a TV series in-universe.
That's the reintegrated pilot scenes.
Oh!
That's why the animation looks different.
Okay. Well, that explains why it's there. It's still weird and out of place, though.
Yeah, no, they just have Scratch and Grounder watch TV with the pilot on it. It's like when because I saw the reintegrated pilot scenes in the description. I probably should not have put that just here in the plot synopsis. But I saw that in the description, and I was watching through the whole episode thinking, where could this possibly be? And I see the Roller and Ball Hog, and it's like, oh, that must be what it is, that they originally planned to have more Sonic 1 badniks in the show. No, they just have Scratch and Grounder watch scenes from the pilot of this show on a TV that has no relevance to anything. And it's like, there's like 2 minutes of that. It takes up a sizable chunk.
Yeah. Scratch and Grounder are somehow able to break out of prison and then kidnap Bert, and even Tails is surprised by this. So I'm like, are they actually getting smarter? No, they're not. It's just inconsistency again.
Mm-hmm.
The plot armor is obvious because Ball Hog and Roller are reprogrammed by Tails at the end of this episode, and yet Scratch and Grounder come out unscathed. It's just weird how they somehow are always there just to be 2 stupid minions for Robotnik.
Well, because, Tails reprogrammed them, maybe? No.
I would think so, but no.
It's like, I get why they never reprogram Metal Sonic, is because A, he's really dangerous, and B, Sega literally does not want him to ever do anything good, because he's meant to be a villain on Sega's part. But there's no rules like that for Scratch and Grounder.
No.
Hell, this was the Wild West of Sonic content, where you could get away with many, many 2 things you shouldn't have been able to if you were making a licensed Sonic story.
Yeah, I think Grounder especially... A lot of the time, I think it's just because they're too sort of clueless, but they don't really have much of a mean streak to them a lot of the time. I feel like if they were left on their own, they would be completely harmless.
They're usually just kind of fine.
Yeah. But back to this episode in particular, at the end, randomly, Sonic kisses Roxy, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, I don't... You've had this waitress, following you around for parts of this episode, but there's nothing implied between them.
I don't understand.
They
Was
just
it
drew a
part
raccoon
of?
girl whose design they liked and decided that Sonic needed to kiss her.
Yeah, Sonic crossed with anyone except Sally is cursed.
We'll get to Sonic's romantic exploits, but it's just this is not any. There's been no development to these characters, and it's weird
No.
because I'm pretty sure that moment alone made Roxy a slightly more popular character than average for Adventures of Sonic, because I've definitely seen fan art of her. I've definitely known people who
undoubtedly.
liked her.
That's how it works. That's how it works. But that's
So
all I got
really,
on that
if I wanna get this podcast to be popular, I need to draw myself making out with Sonic the Hedgehog. It's just a sacrifice I need to take.
And on that terrifying implication, we are done for tonight. Feel free to share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed, and if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, you can always reach us at @deepdivezone on Twitter or deepdivezonepod@gmail.com. Have a great night, and we'll see you next week.